Part 22. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 212. Just when the big mosquito was sleeping, the top leaders of China were no longer so calm. The greater a person's status, the greater the responsibility he needs to bear. Even though being at the top of a country is a very prestigious job, each of these people is under tremendous pressure and sometimes they want to quit. This was the situation at this time. Several similar thoughts arose, but they were all suppressed. The leader, surnamed Song, was very helpless. This war is really tricky. If I didn't have other leaders to help me, I might just be unable to withstand the pressure and just resign. He looked helplessly at the report in his hand. This is a report on nuclear weapons against metal monsters. This report states the urgency of nuclear weapons against metal monsters, as well as some far-reaching impacts on the future, and there are also some concerns about metal monsters, etc. It is possible that the metal monster has other forms, and is its combat power more than this. Leader Song looked at this report, and the helplessness in his heart became even stronger. At this moment, he wanted to finally get the power in his hands and give it to his next leadership team. But this is impossible. When you have benefits and rights, you will fight for it. When there are no benefits, you will step down. Not to mention that such a thing is impossible now, even being an emperor in ancient times couldn't be that simple. After thinking for a long time, Leader Song finally signed his name on this document. Report of nuclear attack. Accurate. Just when this report was approved, in a remote secret military base, a large round metal substance slowly appeared from the depths of the underground space while being transported by a vehicle. Installed in the body of this vehicle is a nuclear warhead that has been sealed for a long time by China. Finally, at the beginning of the second week of this war in the human world, the nuclear strike agenda that had been shelved for a long time was once again put on the table. But this is the important time. Most people are still kept in the dark. They didn't know the true power of the metal monster, nor did they know that this crisis would be a long-lasting thing. They all thought that this event would endanger the entire Earth. It will be a matter that will be resolved quickly, after all, tell the truth. Many people are saying that this metal monster is something developed by an Earth Research Institute or a human scientific research organization, and it only needs to withstand the initial wave of attacks. With humanity's huge population and war heritage, those metal monsters will no longer be a threat. But the top officials of the country really know the horror of metal monsters. But he clearly understands that the metal monster is not that simple. Their individual strength is so high that even ordinary human armies cannot defeat them. And this metal monster. The most important battle damage now is actually not caused by the battle with the human army. It was caused by them losing their energy and becoming unable to move. Some of these immobile metal monsters were carried away by other metal monsters. Some were obtained by people on Earth. The obtained corpses are simply treasures for Earth science researchers. After all, the material of this metal monster and the linkage device in it may seem simple and rough to a layman like Jia Yan, but this is very important to the Earth world. For scientists, it is a scientific structure that has never been seen before, especially the parts that Jia Yan thinks are simple. Because those parts are simple, they are easy to understand and analyze. As a result, Earth scientists have successfully imitated these structures. Come up with some simple linkage structures. These structures alone may make most machinery more efficient and perform better. But what is disappointing is that the core structure of this metal monster, which is the hard part that Jia Yan also knows, cannot be understood or imitated by the Earth world, because there is neither a circuit board nor a unique structure. But like a real creature, it has a very strange physiological foreign body feeling, but even if biologists come to study it, they can't explain why. Therefore, the research on metal monsters is still at the beginning. These scientists do not know that there are blue-gray pebbles in the body of metal monsters, because they simply cannot do it like Jia Yan, in an instant. Kill the metal monster, so they can't get the blue-gray pebbles, because even if the metal monster dies, most of the material in the body, especially the heart, will be converted into another substance. A big moo being prepared on the Earth side did not affect Jia Yan's sleep. Even in this precarious Chang City, he did not feel that he would be in any danger. To him now, human beings are basically like the little flowers and grass on the roadside, without any threat. As for the metal monsters, if they attack Chang City, won't those humans scream? This way he must have woken up. So this time, Jia Yan rested for 7 or 8 hours. When the sky started to become dark again, Jia Yan was full of energy and recovered from his sleep. He felt very good after sleeping for so long this time. After all, the battles in the past few days were too forced. The metal monster army dealt with it twice, once in the daytime the day before yesterday, and once in the night on the outskirts of Chang City yesterday. Among them, he was attacked by the monster's red light no less than 40 or 50 times. Such injuries were really serious, but because he needed to escort his family, Jia Yan endured them all along the way. As a result, this sleep directly made my body better. Yes, the battery is fully charged. Jia Yan looked at the power of the laptop and the external power supply. He didn't know how long the laptop could last with him, but the computer had indeed helped him for a long time. I'm not used to it without him. Jia Yan stepped forward, packed up the notebook, and hung it on one of his middle feet. Not long after, the body of the big mosquito continued to appear in the Chinchi night. But compared to before, he didn't cause much noise this time, so not many people saw the giant mosquito leaving. Hoo ho ho! Another long-distance flight was about to begin. Compared with the previous long-distance flights, the distance this time was a little further, but he didn't care. The current Jia Yan is no longer the same person he was when he first went to the Japanese country, although in terms of time, not much time has passed. But he is now. It must be many times stronger than before. Plus the increase in flight speed. So there is no pressure for Jia Yan at this distance. The big mosquito gradually flew higher and higher in the air. When the altitude reaches 2,000 meters, his rise stopped. Generally speaking, Jia Yan's flying altitude is about 2,000 meters. So no more rising. It's only 2,000 meters in the air. The temperature isn't that high here, and it's a sunless night. Jia Yan felt a little chill. At this time, the other mosquitoes should be almost dead. Those who were lucky enough to survive must have found some place to spend the winter and hid. But Jia Yan is a big mosquito. It's actually causing trouble while flying at an altitude of 2,000 meters. If only other mosquitoes had wisdom. You will definitely be surprised by how strong this giant mosquito can withstand the cold. However, Jia Yan doesn't think that his cold resistance is that strong. After all, if you really want to talk about it, his current cold resistance is probably at the level of an ordinary human being. Compared with his strong defense and attack power, his attributes are simply weak. He is a powerful mosquito, how could he allow himself to have such a huge shortcoming? So he is looking forward to the next mutation. If the next mutation can still maintain the enhancement of the previous mutation, then his ability to resist the cold should also be stronger. Jia Yan actually doesn't know why he has been pursuing a stronger and stronger body. It is obvious that now he has completely achieved the state of being basically invincible in this Earth world. Even those metal monsters cannot defeat him. At this time, even if he stopped and took a rest, it would definitely be normal, but after Jia Yan embarked on this road of becoming stronger, he never stopped. At least for now, he has no intention of stopping, and may not have the motivation to continue. Such things will happen in the future, but definitely not at this time. So he is still heading towards the distant Qinghai Tibet, where there may be clues for him to continue to become stronger. The giant mosquito once again flew slowly in the dark night. His wings were twisted at an angle, making them very energy-saving. However, because of this, the flying speed could only be maintained at a speed of more than 400 kilometers per hour. Although it was much faster than most things on the ground, it was still far faster than most things on the ground. A flying tool inferior to human beings. But Jia Yan was content. A mosquito's lifetime activity range is only 1 or 2 kilometers, but Jia Yan, a big mosquito, can fly 1 or 2 kilometers in the blink of an eye, which is not comparable to ordinary small mosquitoes. It has indeed been a lot of hardship to grow from that time to this level, but the improvement has been extremely rapid, so it is all worth it. Jia Yan walked under the stars and the moon all the way towards the distant land of Qinghai, Tibet. Whether it is a blessed place for his next mutation clues or a disappointing place, I still don't know. It's just that Big Mosquito is convinced that his judgment is correct at this time. After all, he has never made a mistake in similar judgment every time since his rebirth. For example, when he was in the Little Mosquito era, he took the risk to judge the existence of factories. As a result, after he actually went to the northern land, he saw the factory of the Siberian wild tiger, and even got a turning point in his life. For example, although the so-called divine object from the Japanese country was not actually seen in person, the existence of the divine object was already a certainty when they saw the metal pipes during the encounter under Mount Fuji. I won't mention the judgment of other small things. And it is accurate almost every time. This not only shows that Jia Yan has good judgment, but also shows that he is really lucky. If things like that are not random, the chance of disappointment should be greater. But Jia Yan succeeded every time. This can only be called bullshit luck. But whether this investigation and speculation will yield good results, we can only wait and see. After flying for a long time, finally, the sky gradually changed from the dark night again. A little fish belly white appears on the top of the head. The coldness that appeared all over his body slowly became stronger. This only means one thing. That is, the sky is getting brighter, and the land of Qinghai, Tibet has been reached. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 213. Qinghai, Tibet is a huge plateau area covering an area of more than 2 million square kilometers. Spanning several countries, it is also an excellent tourist destination. However, the Qinghai, Tibet that Chinese travel friends refer to is generally the location of Qinghai, Tibet along the Qinghai, Tibet line. This place has beautiful scenery, vast blue sky and water, and some rugged peaks. Some of these peaks are extremely high in altitude, and many are covered with snow all year round. Because of the excellent scenery here, some travelers who like to travel by car often visit here. When the sky was slightly bright, the huge body of the big mosquito finally arrived at this place. With his dark body, looking at the scenery below, Jia Yan felt emotional in his heart. As a southerner, I always feel extremely shocked when I see the vast prairie scenery. The scenery in Qinghai, Tibet is really good, the sky is blue and the earth is vast, and there is a kind of fine air that is not found in other places. However, the air is a little thin and the temperature is relatively low. The big mosquito didn't care about this, so after arriving at this place, he just spread out. It is true that the scenery is beautiful, but for Jia Yan now, a little bit of beautiful scenery can no longer stop him. In this place, there is the possibility of him continuing to make progress. There, he may stop for a little bit of beautiful scenery. Perhaps it is this kind of mentality that allows Jia Yan to reach this point. Now he has no spare time to enjoy the beauty of nature, those uncanny scenery, those warm and pleasant scenery, and all kinds of surprising and wonderful places. Obviously Jia Yan fantasized about traveling to these places when he was a little mosquito, but when he really had this ability, he had lost that mentality. Just like children, when they were young, they always thought about buying a lot of candies for themselves when they grow up. Maybe when they grow up, they can easily realize their childhood dreams. But the one who actually does it? Not many at all. He said that he had grown up and could no longer eat sweets, so as to appease his desire to realize his dream. But actually, this is not a kind of sadness. Jia Yan felt similar to this when he was just a little mosquito. He imagined that one day he would be able to travel between heaven and earth like this, but when it really came to this time, there were taller mountains waiting for him to climb. There was no time to stop and enjoy those views. There is no end to this. That secret research laboratory. It's near Qinghai Lake. Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed slightly. His body is heading in a certain direction. For today's big mosquitoes, distance at this time is already a very simple problem. No matter where you go in the world. For him, it's just a matter of flapping his wings a few more times. Then spend some time and things will arrive. Just flapping its wings, the big mosquito's body. Finally, he slowly bathed in the fiery red golden morning Sunday. At this time, he seemed to feel a little warmer. It was so cold before that Jia Yan felt a little numb, but now that the sun shines, the cold feeling disappears and disappears, at least it is no longer cold. At this time, he is flying happily and feels very comfortable. Not long after, a rather large lake appeared in Jia Yan's sight. When he saw this lake, Jia Yan didn't need to think too much, and he was sure that it was the place he was looking for, because there was only this huge lake in China. That's right. Qinghai Lake is the largest lake in China, with a length of more than 100 kilometers and a width of more than 60 kilometers. It is absolutely the only largest inland lake in China. Jia Yan is about 2,000 meters above the ground and can have a panoramic view of the lake. Such a large lake is very similar to a small ocean, and the color is green, very beautiful. But he was not looking for beautiful scenery in this place, so after watching the scenery for a while, he landed downwards. The two killers' information said that the secret research institute is somewhere diagonal to Qinghai Lake. In that case, I will follow the address to find it. Jia Yan thought about the information he read yesterday in his mind. After finally writing down the address, his compound eyes suddenly lit up. The place where he is not very far from the so-called Secret Research Institute. Jia Yan spread his wings and flew downwards. The sun is getting higher and higher. In this plateau area, the threat of ultraviolet rays is more powerful. Therefore, people who have lived here for a long time have rosy cheeks. In addition, the wind in this place is very strong. People who have lived here for a long time have skin problems. All dry. Therefore, if you want to see the beautiful scenery, you also need to pay. Of course, the staff of the research institute were not here to see any beautiful scenery, so when Jia Yan saw a building complex that was not too hidden, his compound eyes lit up. This place is the building complex that the two killers gave him in the photos. Although this place looks like a simple factory, the factory door is closed tightly, and there are some heavily guarded guards inside. Moreover, the scenery seen from high altitude can vaguely glimpse some very high-end equipment. It is obviously not as simple as a factory. Jia Yan's compound eyes moved slightly. That place was obviously not an easy place to enter. Jia Yan was thinking about how he should conduct his own exploration. The two killers have done some cases in this place, so the defense here must be tighter. Even if it is not so tight, Jia Yan doesn't think that his huge body can still be as motionless as the Mosquito era. The sensual sneaks in. Jia Yan made certain observations around the building at an altitude of about 500 meters. It was still very early at this time, and there were fewer humans moving below, and even fewer looked up, so Jia Yan, after flying around, no one could see him. Find a secluded place to rest first, and then think about how to go in and search. Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed faintly, and his body disappeared directly over the secret place marked on this document. While Jia Yan was in this peaceful place, an urgent order was passed down from the Chinese government. The content of this order is an extremely shocking thing, that is, China's nuclear weapons arsenal, which has never been exposed to the outside world, is finally going to show its ferocious fangs to the outside world. At this time, all the major nuclear-armed countries in the entire Earth have released news that their countries are preparing to use nuclear weapons to attack the metal monsters. The whole Earth at once. It's all rumbling. Everyone knows. The use of nuclear weapons represents that the Earth has truly entered a troubled period, and its future impact will be extremely huge. So many countries use nuclear weapons together to fight against the metal monster. Even if the metal monster is solved, what will happen to the ecological problems in the future? Aren't there other weapon options? Why must we choose such an extreme attack method as nuclear weapons? The Earth's world has not yet reached a dangerous situation, so why should we use nuclear power now? Countless questions are piling up in the minds of the people and the media. But when they tried to interview some government officials, they were told they had no comment. It was just too big. Non-governmental organizations in some countries are gathering outside government office buildings in their countries. There were protests and even some bloodshed. At this time, what matters is which country can really lose its composure and is the first to launch a nuclear weapon to attack the metal monster, then they will become the target of public criticism. Triggers a series of questions. The quarrels in the outside world do not affect the Mosquito's rest at all. After following the directions given by the two killers and finding the existence of the secret research institute, he arrived at a nearby dense bush area and rested directly. He wanted to act at night. After all, his body was too big. If he swaggered by like this during the day, people would obviously notice him. Although Jia Yan is not afraid of being discovered by humans, if the other party destroys information or something useful to him at the same time, then coming here will be in vain, so Jia Yan hopes to avoid being studied as much as possible. He knew he was coming. But his body is so big, what should he do? With this confusion, Jia Yan took a short rest in the bushes. He has not eaten since he mutated from the bottom of the sea for so long, but he is still not very hungry, and when he sees animals, he feels a little resistant to the thought of sucking blood. He felt that even though he had to suck blood, he was still full, but he felt a little physical resistance, as if the food was no longer delicious, but just unpalatable food. Jia Yan has nothing to do with his body, and he does look down on the blood of ordinary animals. At least for now, his body seems to consume energy from the residual amount after mutation, and there is no need to eat for the time being. Jia Yan was even thinking about whether his body would be able to become a body that only needs to eat once for a long time in the future. That would save trouble. Eating once and then again after a long time would be like the ancient Chinese fasting. Time passed slowly while Jia Yan was thinking so wildly. Finally, the sun continued to sink above the head, the temperature in the air became lower again, and a bit of cold wind blew by, making people want to shiver involuntarily. It seemed to be a moonless night. Jia Yan crawled in the bushes and looked at the deserted night sky. The scenery at night was very eerie. Inexplicably, Jia Yan felt that tonight might be an unusual night. This feeling is very mysterious, maybe it is just a temporary thought, but this thought tonight is very strong. It was a little overwhelming and he couldn't breathe. Not a good feeling anyway. Jia Yan laughed at himself. He didn't become a fortune-telling god. He also had a sixth sense. Joke. Jia Yan stopped thinking about this and stood up. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 214. The shadow of the giant mosquito slowly flew high in the sky. A few kilometers away is the secret research institute. I don't know why, when Jia Yan looked at the research institute at night, he always had the idea of not wanting to get close. He didn't know what was wrong with him, but it was very weird. The closer he got to the area above the research institute, the stronger the feeling in his heart became. It was as if there was an invisible wall in front of him, preventing him from moving forward. What's going on? Why is this happening? Jia Yan felt extremely frightened. He had never felt anything like this before. No. I've felt this way before. Jia Yan's heart was finally shocked, and he came to a conclusion that he couldn't believe. That's how I felt when I saw that flying bat when I was a little mosquito. This. Jia Yanfu looked at the buildings below him with an expression of surprise and uncertainty. At this time, he actually felt like giving up. My body won't feel like this for no reason, so this feeling is definitely not a simple situation. It's better to leave first and think about it in the long run. Although Jia Yan often makes some impulsive actions, he is actually a very cautious person, and the situation at this time is really weird, so he decided to retreat. The big mosquito's body began to slowly retreat backwards. He looked at the research institute complex with compound eyes, which consisted of 7 or 8 buildings. Moreover, these 7 or 8 buildings occupy a very large area, and several of them are iron houses. It is not known what is inside. Jia Yan's eyes fell on one of the buildings. There was a solemn look in his eyes. He didn't know what was going on with him, so his eyes naturally focused on this building. Just when Jia Yan retreated unconsciously, a slight sound suddenly sounded. Boom boom boom. A small black thing suddenly flew up from below the ground. This thing is just a piece of iron, but at this time, his speed is instantaneous. It has reached a speed that breaks the speed of sound. And the speed is still accelerating. Wait until you come to Jia Yan's body. It has already exceeded 3 times the speed of sound. Quick. It's incredibly fast. Hoo ho ho. Something with 3 times the speed of sound hit him all at once, and Jia Yan couldn't even dodge it. Bang. The head-on attack hit Jia Yan's exoskeleton directly. Jia Yan only felt that his body was hit by a huge force. This power is almost as powerful as those explosives. But at this moment, what part of his body could this iron block destroy? The attack of this piece of iron. There was only a faint white spot left on Jia Yan's body, and then the white spot quickly returned to its original appearance. Jia Yan was horrified in his heart. At this time, his compound eyes were focused, and he saw clearly the person in front of him because of the blow to his body. A piece of iron that slows down a bit. This piece of iron has a simple structure. The overall shape is prismatic, although the corners are sharp. But it's not a well-crafted look. To put it bluntly, it is actually more regular than a random piece of iron picked from the ground. But ordinary iron pieces. But it's impossible to fly into the sky. This iron piece actually exceeded the speed of sound, not only the speed of sound, but also exceeded the speed of sound by more than 3 times. This is simply unbelievable. Just now, Jia Yan and Ben didn't react. They were attacked from the ground by this piece of iron and were directly attacked. This is basically impossible given Jia Yan's reaction speed. Jia Yan looked at this piece of iron with a heavy heart. No matter how you look at it, it is just an ordinary piece of iron. What the hell is this? Weird. Strange. Jia Yan kept backing up cautiously. But after the iron piece made a turning movement in the air, it actually attacked again. In the previous attack, you took advantage of the darkness and attacked from an angle on the ground that I didn't notice. It's not that easy this time. Bang. A huge sonic boom sounded. Although this iron piece was only the size of a small teacup, the speed of sound it broke through was too much, so the attack noise it caused was also extremely huge. Like a huge explosion. What sound? Suddenly there were some human voices coming from below. When these humans looked at the sky, they were all shocked. The giant mosquito thing is probably well known all over the world. Researchers like them are very aware of it. Some people even said that they want to catch a giant mosquito and study it. They don't know that if they really catch one of this giant mosquito race, the others will disappear. Because the so-called giant mosquito race actually only has one. When each of these people saw the giant mosquito monster above their heads, they were all shocked. It's not a good thing for giant mosquitoes to come to this place. The fighting power of the giant mosquito cannot be underestimated, although now only the Japanese side has had the experience of fighting a giant mosquito once, and it was only an air battle. At least on the human side, it is speculated that the combat power of giant mosquito race monsters is definitely higher than that of metal monsters. Coupled with their unique advantage of being able to fly, the average army, even with a few thousand people, is probably no match for him. This kind of monster can only be dealt with by unconventional means, such as using incendiary bombs or other weapons that are typical for dealing with mosquito creatures. But that is a way to deal with ordinary mosquitoes. God knows if it will be useful against this giant mosquito creature. Jia Yan just looked distractedly at the humans below and stopped paying attention to them. The main opponent right now is the metal piece in front of me. The attack just now caused the metal piece to fly directly to a very far place. It didn't take long for him to solidify his strength again, and his speed continued to reach 3 times the speed of sound in the air. He turned around and continued to attack. What exactly is this piece of iron? Jia Yan was thinking and avoiding. At this time, he had lost that feeling of fear. After all, if it was just a small piece of iron, he didn't need to worry at all. But that ubiquitous feeling is still pervading. Let him get out of here quickly. At this time, Jia Yan could no longer tell what it felt like. The body flashes. Jia Yan's speed. He also reached an extremely fast level in a short time. At this time, he directly used his super explosive power to increase his speed. Suddenly it broke through to the speed of sound. Bang bang bang. The sonic boom caused by a giant mosquito whose body exceeds the speed of sound. It's not something that a small piece of metal can do. This sound is comparable to the huge sound caused by a fighter jet breaking the speed of sound. Whistle, roar, roar. Under the blessing of the speed of sound, the big mosquito's figure suddenly became extremely violent. But that little piece of iron was even faster, and it pierced right through. Click. Jia Yan's body, abdomen, and back. It accidentally rubbed a little bit. It's still a small white spot, but this feeling is uncomfortable. He could only be beaten passively, and he was only hit by a small piece of iron. What a big deal. The cold light in Jia Yanfu's eyes was very intense. That's when the metal pieces attack again. Jia Yan has one front foot. Thrust out hard. When a huge sound sounded high in the sky, these were 2 objects exceeding the speed of sound. The sound caused by the collision in the air. Absolutely huge. The people below were so frightened that they covered their ears. Jia Yan's stab hit the oncoming metal piece accurately. After the dark metal iron piece was hit in the air, just spinning and falling towards the ground. Jia Yan's compound eyes are even more lustrous. His figure was already in almost sonic mode, and he was chasing downwards at this moment. This piece of iron is really weird. If possible, he would like to get it and study it. Hoo ho ho. The giant mosquito's huge figure landed towards the research institute. At this moment, all the humans below were extremely frightened, and some people screamed in horror. The oppressive force of the giant mosquito monster is also an extremely terrifying thing for humans. Jia Yan's body is still landing. He was about to come into contact with the small iron piece that was free to fall, but that was it. Yan. A sharp voice suddenly sounded violently directly in Jia Yan's mind. Yin 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 yin. This sound is extremely sharp. It seemed like it was going to tear Jia Yan's entire head apart. Ah! The huge pain almost made Jia Yan faint on the spot. His body suddenly changed from a high-speed landing to a free fall. The feeling of free fall was as if this giant mosquito had suddenly lost the ability to fly. No, I can't faint. Just when Jia Yan almost lost consciousness, only this thought flashed in his mind. The giant mosquito's body rolled with difficulty in the air. His wings could barely flap. At this time, he was just relying on his spiritual power to support himself in flying. Along the way, Jia Yan's growth is so bitter. Even so, he survived. Now an inexplicable voice wants him to fall down. Absolutely not. The light in Jia Yanfu's eyes was almost ready to burn. Boom boom boom. The giant mosquito's wings flapped desperately. Boom boom boom. Just when he was close to the ground, Jia Yan's body stretched hard again before he fell. Boom boom boom. The sparkle in his compound eyes became even worse. But at this moment, the fierce sound attack sounded louder and louder in his mind. Yin yin yin. Ah! I won't fall, I won't fall. I will definitely not fall. A mouthful of blood with red liquid spewed out from the front of Jia Yan's mouthpiece, and the world in his compound eyes almost shook. I haven't had dinner yet, alas. I went to eat it. I hope everyone can subscribe to the official version so that Bulletin U's hard work will be rewarded. Thanks. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 215. Jia Yan felt a little regretful in his mind. This trip to Qinghai Tibet didn't seem to go so smoothly. It would have been better if he hadn't come. The resistance of my body before was obviously caused by letting it show when I saw a powerful enemy. Why do I understand it now? The blazing fire in his eyes seemed to be extinguished. But right now? Jia Yan suddenly thought of the caress his little sister gave him before leaving. If he falls like this, who will protect my little sister and family in the future? In this era where metal monsters are rampant, without his protection, wouldn't his family have to be homeless like ordinary people? No. Never fall down. Absolutely not. No. Giant mosquito. Jia Yan, will never fall. I'm not afraid of any bullshit noise. Jia Yan's compound eye fire, which was about to be lost, lit up again. Yin 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 yin. The huge voice in his mind kept ringing, getting louder and more violent every time. But the big mosquito just spit out a mouthful of blood again, and his body shook violently twice, but he still didn't fall down. Jia Yan's body was already standing on the ground. He really didn't have the strength to fly anymore. This happens to be the inner ground of the secret research institute. In his blurry vision, Big Mosquito could only see the broken piece of iron lying on the ground, with a clear puncture scar on it, which was caused by him. Jia Yan shook his body, stepped forward, and picked up the piece of iron with one of his front feet. His body was no longer stable. Da-da-da. At this time, the security forces in this research institute were already carrying various firearms, aiming at the big mosquito, and launched an attack. However, when the bullet hit the clot defense on the mosquito's body, it could only make a few shallow marks. Can't cause any damage. He shook a little more. Then he was bathed in all kinds of attacks, as if walking in a net of fire and bullets, slowly walking towards the entrance of the research institute with 6 legs. Bang! The iron door was hit hard by it. It collapsed directly. The big mosquito just walked out of this so-called secret research institute under the gaze of each eye. And a long time passed. There was a huge mosquito on the ground outside the research institute, gradually swaying and flying. The big mosquito was flying in the sky, and his body was so seriously injured that he could hardly even fly. Just below this flying speed. The hiding place where I stayed before seems to be far away. Obviously I didn't look down on this short distance of a few kilometers before. Finally, the body of the big mosquito kept shaking up and down. I saw my temporary shelter. This bush is relatively safe. There is no fear of any humans checking this place for the time being. Jia Yan flew down with great difficulty, and then his body almost landed hard. Hit it directly near the laptop bag. Bang! The sound of the giant mosquito hitting the ground was extremely loud. Almost as soon as Jia Yan fell to the ground, his consciousness fell into an even more confusing state. There was an unbelievable light in his compound eyes. In this so-called research institute, there is such a terrifying existence. What is he? Jia Yan forced himself to cheer up, and then picked up the metal piece he was holding onto his forefoot. Watch carefully. This piece of metal, when viewed at this time, looks no different from ordinary metal, but it did make a series of movements in the air before, even attacking Jia Yan at a speed of 1 or 3 times the speed of sound. But now, it seemed that it had no possibility of movement at all, and it just lay in his front feet without making any sound. Jia Yan understood that the thing in the research institute had just manipulated the metal piece to attack him in a way that he could not understand, but now he couldn't see any difference in people at all. There must be some mystery in this metal. After studying for a long time, Jia Yan lost his concentration again. He simply released the metal piece and entered a semi-conscious state. The giant mosquito fell into a deep sleep. But the small piece of iron thrown aside swayed slightly under strange circumstances. It kept moving and shaking. Click, click, click. Finally, the metal piece seemed to give up. After moving 2 meters, it just lay there and stopped moving. Jia Yan didn't notice this, he fell into his sleep. In this dream, there is a young man. This young man is the king of children and looks nothing like Jia Yan before. But Jia Yan knew that this boy was him. He gets into fights, and the kids he fights get bigger and bigger. Finally one day, when he was only an elementary school student, he was beaten by a middle school student. If a primary school student fights with a middle school student, it is impossible to win. And he in the dream was just a 4th grade kid. So he lost very simply. The middle school student took all his money away, and the child returned home crying. Really sad. It was the first time I lost so badly in a fight. His parents taught him not to fight in the future, but to study hard and become a good student. So he studied hard, and finally, a child king became a top student. And this top student's grades were so good that he finally went to college. Fall in love with and capture the love of the college belle. His life is wonderful. But at that moment, the school beauty's fiancé appeared in front of him. See, in the end, you have to let your fists do the talking. When Jia Yan in this dream died again in the abandoned house, he stared blankly at the ceiling. His body was dead, but his soul was still there looking at the ceiling. There is nothing surprising about this. No matter what kind of life he chooses, he will eventually return to this point. In the dream, he did not become a mosquito. The dream had no ending, and he did not have a more different life. Jia Yan was in a dream, and he didn't know if the dream was telling him something, or if he was looking for some answer somewhere. He only knew that some things in the world were really weird. If he wanted to become a powerful mosquito, there would be obstacles. Just like in his dream, he seemed to have chosen a different life, but the ending is still the same. Change your life, but it is still just a dream. If you want to change something, then start with reality. The giant mosquito monster crawling on the ground, its compound eyes that had lost their luster, regained their luster. Jia Yan moved his body slightly on the ground. The next moment, he found that he could hardly move even a little bit. My head still hurts, which is the main reason for my current state. He immediately analyzed his situation. That sound attack was simply an irresistible attack. At that time, Jia Yan almost thought he was going to die. But he still survived. Unable to move, Jia Yan simply lay on the ground and slowly regained his strength. There was another round of sunshine shining down on the top of the head, but this sun looked brighter, but there was no feeling of warmth. Jia Yan didn't know whether it was because of his poor physical condition or why, but he always felt very cold. I don't know how long it has been, whether it was one day or several days. Jia Yan didn't know the time in his dream. Jia Yan assumed that only one night had passed, but in fact he felt the same. What on earth was that thing that attacked me last night? He can control iron pieces to attack. Wait a minute. When Jia Yan thought of the piece of iron, he was suddenly startled. The piece of iron that was supposed to be near the forefoot was actually missing. Jia Yan's mind seemed to be spinning, and he quickly raised his head. This action took a lot of energy from him. But what surprised him was that the small iron piece was lying on the ground not far away, quietly. But there are obvious traces of movement on the ground. It actually bounced and left. Jia Yan looked at the mark on the ground and suddenly understood. It was like a flash of lightning flashed through his heart. All this time, he thought that the things in the research institute were in that big building, and the iron piece came from there. Jia Yan had a preconceived idea and did not doubt the iron piece at all. What if this iron piece, or this thing, is related to something? Thinking of this, the light in Jia Yan's eyes became even brighter. Reborn as an Interstellar Giant Mosquito author, Bulletin U. Chapter 216. But now he is still unable to move, so rest is still more important at this time. So the big mosquito is just a pair of compound eyes, staring at the metal piece lying not far away without moving at all. He is still resting and recovering. Time passed little by little. Finally, when the full moon is about to appear again, the giant mosquito's huge body stood up from the ground. His body is still a little weak, but he can still do this little thing like standing up. The giant mosquito's dark body began to slowly approach the small piece of iron. The small piece of iron in his eyes had already formed a small gap when he was fighting with his own that night. The gap was the size of a coin. However, what appeared inside the gap was not a metal texture, but a kind of texture similar to that of metal. Jia Yan's body color is very similar to the dark color. If it is a metal, it is also an extremely special metal. But the more Jia Yan looks at it now, the more he feels that this thing is not metal at all. When he looked at this thing, he actually felt a little bit like that night again. That feeling was that faint sense of threat, but this feeling seemed to be much lighter at this time. The iron piece in front of him suddenly moved a little when Jia Yan stood up. It shook up. It seems that at this moment, he burst out with strength and galloped away into the distance. But before that, a long and slender foot stepped down hard. Snap! Stepping down with his front foot, Jia Yan stepped on the metal piece under his feet. Jia Yan's compound eyes were glaring, and then his front feet kept rubbing against the ground, rubbing hard. Squeak, squeak, squeak. Even though Big Mosquito has not recovered, he still possesses extremely powerful power at this time. This power cannot be resisted by a mere piece of metal. And this thing looks like a piece of metal iron. It's definitely not a piece of metal. It's something else that Jia Yan doesn't know. If it were an ordinary piece of metal, the two sides fought that night, and when the iron piece was struck open several times in the air, the ordinary piece of iron would have been cut into pieces by his sharp forefoot. Just cut the whole thing open. However, this piece of metal didn't look like anything was wrong. If Jia Yan hadn't used great force to cut off a corner of it, the battle that night might have happened. Will last a long time. And it actually had a bit of the feeling in that research institute that shocked Jia Yan. Of course, this feeling is already very light. But it was precisely because of this that Jia Yan felt even more solemn. He didn't know what his feeling meant, let alone his current body. Why did he become so weak? This iron piece is in his hand, and it doesn't look like it can explode 3 times the speed of sound. Then there is no reason for Jia Yan to let him escape again. No matter what it is, he is the powerful one now, and he can completely suppress this piece of metal. He still exerted all his strength with his steps. Jia Yan felt that even if it was a real piece of metal, a layer of skin had been rubbed off by him. After waiting for a long time, he finally moved his front foot away. A deep pit has appeared on the ground. In this pit, a dark-colored object lies there, and it feels like a mortal object. But Jia Yan knows that this thing is not a mortal thing. It is a strange thing that can move on its own, fly into the sky, and can even fly at 3 times the speed of sound. Jia Mu looked at this thing with a faint look. He knew that this thing really had no ability to move. Otherwise, he would either attack him and kill him while he was sleeping, or he would take the opportunity to escape. However, these two, none of them have been done, so he can judge that this weird thing obviously has no ability to move. Move your front feet away and look at the thing. Not long after, Jia Yan picked it up again with his front feet. It didn't show any resistance during this process. Let Jia Yan pick him up and take him back to where the notebook is. What's next? Jia Yan was lying on the ground, looking at the object, wondering what to do with him. This metal piece-like thing obviously has a secret, but how should we reveal the secret? Jia Yan was a little clueless. Just when Jia Yan looked at this metal-like thing, a strange power appeared on the surface of its body. Jia Yan only felt his eyes stinging. Then, he felt a faint voice resounding in his body. This sound was neither loud nor quiet, and it was different from the sound that sounded during the battle that night, but for Jia Yan now, it was an extremely terrifying thing. Suddenly, his head felt as if someone had sprinkled a handful of salt on it once again when it was already scarred. The giant mosquito rolled miserably. There was a loud noise in the bushes, and dust was rising all over the sky. The luster in Jia Yanfu's eyes continued to lose part of it. His spirit was already sluggish, but now it became even more sluggish. 20 meters away from the metal sheet, Jia Yan quietly watched the scene over there. It was as if nothing had been done to the metal piece, and it was still lying where Jia Yan had abandoned it. It's just that the sense of power on its appearance has been completely lost. What the hell is this? Jia Yan walked back again with some vigilance. He was wary of the strange power that this piece of metal would continue to unleash. But this time he encountered nothing. He walked to the metal piece very smoothly. When Jia Yan continued to push the object with his front foot and found that the other party did not respond, he finally determined that the metal piece had no power to harm him. The reason is very simple, that is, he can no longer feel the faint feeling of intimidation from this metal piece. This thing sounds mysterious, but it is actually understandable. Just like when a human sees a tiger, the biological instinct of fear will still arise, like a natural sense of oppression. But at this time, the metal piece no longer has that feeling, and Jia Yan doesn't think it has no significance in research. He simply put the metal piece on the front foot of the knife and continued to play with it. But at this time, the metal piece seemed to have lost something all of a sudden, and the feeling of agility became vague. But at the same time, after the faint feeling of shock was lost, another feeling appeared unexpectedly. That is what Jia Yan has not felt for a long time, the biological instinct of extreme desire. This is... Jia Yan was shocked. This creature's instinctive desire to devour, long after it swallowed the azure substance, he felt that it would never appear again. After all, there were fewer and fewer things that could attract him, even those purple-red liquids or black liquids that had been released before. In front of him. It probably won't arouse any interest in him. But now there is something that attracts him more than those blue-gray pebbles. Even this thing is the metal piece that Jia Yan has never thought about. This thing attacked him before and seemed to be extremely dangerous and terrifying. But now that it has lost that huge deterrent power, it has become extremely dangerous to Jia Yan. Get thirsty. Good guy, my desire to devour is more than ever before. There is such a powerful thing. Is this thing my next chance? Jia Yanfu looked at the metal piece in front of him, and with great reluctance, he completely controlled his desire to devour it. Then the light in his compound eyes became even more intense. He raised his head and looked at the buildings of the research institute not far away. The luster in his eyes shone slightly. Although I thought it was a wrong decision to come to this institute, I still found something useful for me, and it seems to be rewarding. It's just that this thing seems a bit dangerous and a bit weird. But it doesn't matter. Jia Yan has long known that if he wants to continue to become stronger, the useful things he encounters will become more and more weird. This time, although the weirdness is too much, it is a metal piece that can fly into the sky and attack people, but it is still within the range that he can bear. It's just that the mysterious thing in the research institute continuously used that huge sound attack on Jia Yan. Does that thing have anything to do with the metal piece? If there is a relationship, then could he also be one of his opportunities? Thinking of this, Jia Yan's compound eyes trembled slightly. But this tremor is not the kind of fear, but a kind of excitement. Jia Yan himself didn't know what this excitement meant, but he still wanted to study something that could inflict serious damage on him in such a weird way. But if there is no reason, his reason tells him not to take risks. But now that there is a reason, this matter is a certainty. Jia Yan actually wants revenge. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 217. These things were put aside first, and Jia Yan still crawled down. At this time, he was still a little uncomfortable, so he still needed to take a rest. He couldn't fall asleep anymore, and his pair of compound eyes looked at the research institute complex in the distance. There was that terrifying existence there. Jia Yan didn't know what he was thinking, but it was obvious that he was very interested in this thing, and this interest was not as simple as research. After all, he is not a scientist and has no pursuit of such things. He was just wondering if he could get any benefit from this thing. My feeling should be right. This thing is a creature, and it is not an ordinary creature. It is a terrifying creature that I have never seen before. But this creature is so terrifying. It can actually make that kind of sound to deal with others. And I still can't figure out what this sound is about. After all, I'm about to fall into a coma. The only thing I can remember now is the thing is, those staff members had no influence at all at that time. Jia Yan's eyes were even brighter. Then can I determine that this sound is not actually a sound, but an invisible shock wave? When the shock wave reaches my head, it transforms into an attack force, causing me to have the illusion of a huge noise. Jia Yan's compound eyes brightened even more. If my guess is correct, then this creature may have the ability to use shock waves to attack the heads of other creatures. Is it some creature in that research institute? So, is this piece of metal a real piece of metal? Or is it a piece of material that fell from the monster itself? If it is a piece of material that fell from his body, it would be a bit scary. It can actually turn itself into a piece of metal. Part of the body is used to attack like this, and I looked at it for a long time. This metal block does not have any other station devices, which means that it cannot fly. Then the creature can control this metal block from a distance and make it the flying speed exceeds 3 times the speed of sound. Jia Yan was full of disbelief, and he had more and more questions in his mind. Anyway, if I don't deal with this creature, I won't be able to uncover the secrets of this mysterious institute, and I won't be able to get any benefits here. So now I think about it, how should I deal with this thing? I saw him controlling this metal before. It looks like a piece of iron. Giant Mosquito is still studying. What he didn't know was that the arrival of his giant mosquito caused a commotion in this research institute. A report in the institute is being shared by key personnel. This report is about giant mosquito monsters that appear again and again on this earth. And reporting of hazardous incidents caused. These events are in a state of progression, with each giant mosquito monster getting bigger and bigger each time. Then the combat power is also changing with each passing day. Every time the giant mosquito monster appears, it has a new appearance. However, none of them thought that this giant mosquito monster, each of which was different, was actually the same monster. The giant mosquito monster they came to the research institute this time should be the one that had fought with the metal monster in the Fujian province in southern China some time ago. But why was this monster in this place, and why was it being studied? In the sky above, there was actually a battle with what seemed to be a small, dark thing. No one really knows about this. I think this monster came to this place for nothing. Maybe it wanted to come to our research institute to do some damage, but it encountered that dark thing on the way and started a fight. Otherwise, how can we explain his thousands of miles away? Run to our place. I think so too, but there's nothing we can do about this giant mosquito monster. We can't fight it and we can't drive it away. What should we do? We can't do it because of such a mosquito monster. Just evacuate and close the institute. I think we'll start with this. We'll ask the relevant units of the country for help, and then consider whether it's possible to capture this giant mosquito. After all, it's all in front of us. We can't see such a good opportunity. Our relevant units all face will be lost. After several people discussed it, they finally came to a conclusion about the giant mosquito monster. Their plan was to capture the giant mosquito and conduct research on it. But Jia Yan here is also ready to continue his peaceful visit to this research institute for a period of time. Whoever has the last laugh on both sides will be the 8 immortals crossing the sea and showing off their magical powers. Finally, night falls again. The Qinghai Lake at night is sparkling, and the gentle wind blows on the lake, giving it a different beauty than during the day. But at this time, Qinghai Lake, which had never had monster legends, suddenly had a huge monster, rising far into the sky in this place. But this monster is no longer a legend. He is the famous giant mosquito monster in China and even the entire world. During the day, some fishermen discovered this monster, but they reported it to the police, but did not get any response. At this time, the Huaxia kingdom was exhausted from dealing with metal monsters. Another giant mosquito monster would be unimaginable matter, so when the official learned the news, they immediately let it go. And the request from another aspect is a bit of a headache for them, because this place is a secret research institute on the bank of Qinghai Lake. This research institute has been providing the country with strong scientific and technological foundation, and their core secrets are the country's huge wealth. This research institute can be said to be an Area 51 of China, but at this time it is above. The request for this place is a bit of a headache. That is the requirement of this unit, and it is actually to deal with the giant mosquito monster. The reason is that this monster may affect the safety of their secret research unit. Should we send troops to deal with giant mosquitoes? This matter made the entire Chinese Communist Party's top management in trouble. What they are most worried about is whether this giant mosquito monster is a huge group, because it is relatively easy to deal with one, but if the number of this giant mosquito monster race reaches the 100 they think. Although it cannot be directly compared, someone has said that 100 monsters are equivalent to 1 million Chinese troops. If we start a war with them, then there is no need to fight this war. China can just admit defeat. Therefore, the military rarely remains silent for a period of time regarding the requests made by researchers who only knew about research. The answer given later was to first see if the giant mosquito monster is really harmful to this research institute. And it's this night. The shadow of a huge flying creature appeared on the military radar, urgently dispatched by the military. That's the giant mosquito monster. Altitude 1000, urgently approaching. One combatant after another is looking at the screen nervously. If the other party is really coming towards this research institute, then they have no other choice but to fight. However, there are only less than 500 troops in this place at this time. Although there are some anti-aircraft weapons and equipment, they are probably not very effective against that terrifying monster. Target is close, Target is close, once again, target is close, units get ready for battle. Jia Yan, who was high in the sky, also had a solemn gaze. He really couldn't move last night, so he missed the opportunity to attack. Now he was thinking about dealing with the mysterious creatures in the research institute, but unexpectedly, with his heat detection ability, he saw that outside the research institute, they were all human warriors. Figure. It's not wrong to think about it. How could the Chinese government allow him to wreak havoc in important units like this? But these human warriors don't have some ultimate weapons. For me, they are ineffective. Can you stop me? Although Jia Yan's compound eyes were solemn, he was not really worried about anything. For him, such a small number of human troops is no longer difficult to face. The giant mosquito flew slowly and leisurely. In fact, Jia Yan was concentrating his strength on the way. After all, the opponent he faced was just a creature or something that could make strange noises. If he was in good condition today, so today is the time for him to reveal the secret. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 218. Boom boom boom. The body of the giant mosquito reached an altitude of only about 800 meters above the research institute. Finally comes the downward attack. As expected, we are here for this. Liaison officer, report to the top, we must open fire. A commander of the army below showed a wry smile on his face, and then gave the order to the liaison officer beside him. After giving the order, he directly sounded the voice on the walkie-talkie, all units, please pay attention. The giant mosquito monster above the target, the attack has begun. Just after he finished speaking, he gave a gesture command to attack to the huge steel monster lying next to him. This monster looks a bit like a tank lying on the ground at first glance, but its barrel is not very similar, and there is an antenna-like thing on its body. The name of this steel monster is self-propelled anti-aircraft gun. The cost of self-propelled artillery is expensive, usually twice or more than tanks of the same level. However, the number of self-propelled anti-aircraft guns coming here this time is 5. This shows that China attaches great importance to this research institute unit. Although there is no idea of starting an all-out war with the so-called giant mosquito monster race, but in a battle against a giant mosquito monster, 5 such heavyweight anti-aircraft weapons were actually sent out, which can be said to be very careful. Jia Yan is flying downwards in the high air. Everything. Suddenly, in his eyes, he saw bright rays of light below that illuminated the entire world. The faint light in his eyes suddenly shone. Jia Yan didn't know any self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. Anyway, he had never done much research on human combat weapons, but that didn't stop him from seeing how powerful this weapon was. The ammunition fired from the artillery was attacking in the direction of Jia Yan at a rapid speed in the air. However, compared to the attacks that Jia Yan has been subjected to, the speed of this attack is obviously not comparable to the metal-iron attacks of the past few days. Jia Yan could even dodge the attack with 3 times the speed of sound. Couldn't he dodge the attack from this anti-aircraft gun? He moved very lightly and made a dodge movement in the air. The speed of the giant mosquito has actually reached the speed of sound. Him at this time. It's extremely fast and makes dazzling moves in the air. This speed combined with his flexibility sometimes makes it impossible for human eyes to track his movements, let alone artillery fire. And it was night time. Although the night is not an obstacle to self-propelled anti-aircraft guns equipped with radar equipment. But for more human soldiers, they don't have any night vision equipment. After all, they are the Chinese army. It's impossible for everyone with so much money to have a night vision device. Jia Yan only saw tongues of fire coming from below. His body is dodging quickly. But he obviously didn't know about the artillery fire created specifically for high-altitude things. It's good to just dodge and shoot directly. I saw a blast of artillery fire exploding near his body. The so-called anti-aircraft fire can be carried out near the target object. A weapon that explodes on its own and destroys the opponent. No, this gunfire was made specifically for those aircraft. Although the giant mosquito monster did not expect that the artillery fire could actually explode in the air. But the human army obviously underestimated the terrifying defense power of the giant mosquito. Boom boom boom. A huge explosion sounded in Jia Yan's ears. He only saw the cannonball next to him that he should have avoided exploding. Metal bullets exploded from it. Ding 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 ding. A series of bullets and metal-destroying materials hit the surface of Jia Yan's body. But this attack, not to mention Jia Yan's exoskeleton, but also the clot defense on his surface, failed to break through and could only cause a series of clanging sounds on it. But Jia Yan's compound eyes flashed even more brightly in the sky. The giant mosquito raised its head and stretched its flying posture upwards in the sky. Jia Yan doesn't want to escape. He just wants to gain more inertial power. After gaining a certain amount of inertia, this giant mosquito suddenly swooped down. Whistle, roar, roar. The body that breaks through the speed of sound is extremely arrogant. Boom boom boom. A series of human army anti-aircraft weapons shot up from a distance. The characteristic of these anti-aircraft weapons is that they fire very fast, but no matter how fast they are, what can they do against a monster that is very fast, flexible, and not afraid of direct attack by artillery shells? Company commander. No, he's going to attack. We can't do any harm to him. A soldier rolled and crawled towards the soldier who gave the command. This man could no longer make any command sounds. Although I had anticipated the possibility of such a situation before coming here, when I saw that one of the top air defense companies in the country could not even harm the fur of this giant mosquito monster, the company commander was still extremely excited. Depressed. How to fight like this? This monster is completely invulnerable, and it even has no use for artillery. Whether you direct or not, you are just like a bird. Retreat. Be careful, he will come down to attack at close range. The company commander did not make any mistakes in his busy schedule, nor did he act impulsively. He directly issued the order to retreat. The team here began to retreat, but they didn't need to panic so much, because when the big mosquito reached the ground, it was still more than 100 meters away. Two materials that were almost identical to the metal piece in Jia Yan's hand flashed out of the darkness again. These two objects were also completely black in color and extremely fast. They were exactly the same as the one we encountered last time. They were actually over 3 times the speed of sound. It is worth mentioning that these two metal pieces are both larger than the previous metal piece, and one of them vaguely resembles a sharp cone, which can directly cause damage. But at this moment, Jia Yan's compound eyes suddenly stared. Sure enough, it showed up again. The previous battle with the human army was just like playing for Jia Yan. Now that the real master appeared, of course he let the human army go and defended against this metal piece. At this moment, Jia Yan's mind was full of energy. You don't attack humans, but you attack me as soon as I get close, so that can explain something. You are not afraid of humans. This is because they are either your partners or they do not pose any threat to you, so you are not afraid of them. When I came last time, the humans seemed a little surprised by the metal piece you used. Moreover, they didn't send anyone to search for me even though I was so seriously injured. This shows that they don't know how to do it at all. You know about my injury. Since you didn't disclose this matter to them, does that mean that you are not a human partner at all? You are even like me and cannot communicate with humans. Then there is only one reason left. That is that humans pose no threat to you, so you let them do what they do, and even your true body is an ordinary research object in this research institute, right? Jia Yanfu looked at the two pieces of metal that were shooting at him at super speed. The blazing light in his eyes was like a burning flame, which had never been so blazing. So I can conclude that when I got close, You didn't let me get close like you did with those humans. Just make one point. You are simply afraid of me. Because I can pose a threat to you. Boom boom boom. The sound of giant mosquitoes flying suddenly became more violent in the sky. Whoosh 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 whoosh. The huge wings flap like crazy. The giant mosquito is extremely fast, but behind it are two dark shadows that are faster than him. The speed of these two shadows is much faster than Jia Yan's speed. And the flexibility is not bad at all. Whoosh. This is a huge sound made by two dark substances. They are chasing Jia Yan. Jia Yan's body flexibly rolled in the air. This action is simply not something that human pilots on Earth can do. Boom boom boom. The big mosquito suddenly dodged to the right, and a dark shadow brushed past his body. The sharp angle scratched out a little bit of damage to the giant mosquito's clawed defense. Sure enough, it is more powerful than last time. Jia Yan was slightly surprised when he saw this scene. One attack passed by, but another attack came in a flash. Poof. This attack could not be avoided, and Jia Yan's body staggered in mid-air. His flying speed suddenly slowed down. Injured. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 219. In the dark night sky, a big mosquito was flying rapidly through the sky. Beside him were two metal-like objects that were moving following his flight. The speed of this big mosquito was extremely fast, but the speed of the two metal objects following him was even more incredible. They made a series of evasive and direction-changing movements in the air. Jia Yan's body shook a little, and the previous impact made him unable to bear it. These two metal objects were only slightly larger than the one he got, but at such a high speed, their attack power was doubled. After all, at such a high speed, any increase in weight is a huge improvement. Jia Yan understands this. The metal piece before attacked him at 3 times the speed of sound, and it was a little weak in attack power. But now he was facing two metal blocks that were at least twice as heavy as the previous one. These two metal blocks, one has extremely sharp edges and corners, and the other is very heavy. If they were dropped on the ground, anyone who saw them would definitely think that they were just two ordinary pieces of metal. But when they fly like this after getting up, there are two weapons with huge destructive power. Jia Yan's body was flying rapidly in the air. Whoosh! The two pieces of metal behind him were constantly chasing him at a faster speed than him. This pursuit is not so easy to dodge. Whoosh 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 whoosh. Jia Yan's speed is already extremely fast. At least it broke the speed of sound, maybe already his fastest speed of 1,800 km per hour, but in front of these two pieces of metal, it still seemed as slow as a snail. Their speed reaches 3 times the speed of sound. If it weren't for these two pieces of metal, they didn't seem to be so flexible when flying. Jia Yan turned violently and they couldn't keep up. Otherwise, they would definitely be able to catch up with Jia Yan easily. Chase chase chase. Run away, run away. The big one and the two little ones made countless moves in the sky, which was simply dazzling. But the small army below saw the strange battle above them. It just accelerated the speed of leaving. They are scared by the giant mosquito monster. This artillery company. I have never heard of any flying thing being able to survive such a violent attack without any damage. And now the giant mosquito monster is actually in the sky. A thrilling aerial battle was carried out against two strange substances that did not exist. You can see those two substances. It's also an extremely scary thing. Now that two things are fighting there, they naturally seize the opportunity and evacuate directly. Otherwise, what will it do if it flows down? They can't deal with this giant mosquito. On the research institute side, the researchers were already under the cover of two teams of soldiers. After leaving this place, they looked at the battle of monsters above their heads and muttered words as they walked away one by one. It seemed as if he wanted to slice up the giant mosquito and study it. But the giant mosquito's powerful fighting power is not something they can find a way to catch. The battle in the air continues. At this time, the light in Jia Yan's eyes still had not completely faded away. He was looking at the two pieces of metal chasing him. Although the battle was very fierce, but Jia Yan still observed carefully. He noticed a characteristic of metal materials last time and was about to verify it now. It was almost the same place last time. Jia Yan's compound eyes lit up slightly while he was flying. At a place almost 1,500 miles away from the research institute, Jia Yan suddenly turned his head and headed higher into the sky, suddenly crashing upward. Whistle, roar, roar. The giant mosquito broke through 2,000 meters in the air in an instant. Such a small distance was almost reached in the blink of an eye. And the two chasing metallic objects immediately followed suit. But when the distance of 2,000 meters is exceeded, the two metal blocks were suddenly stunned, and all speed was lost. They both looked like they had no strength at all. Good opportunity. At this time, Jia Yan's eyes suddenly became brighter. As early as the last time, he was chased by the piece of metal he had obtained. After breaking through a little distance, he found that the metal substance behind him had lost most of its power and returned to the sky above the research institute. At that time, its power came back again. So Jia Yan has already made a judgment that it is something in that research institute. Although it can control this metal substance to attack himself, it must be limited by distance. But even if you know this, it is impossible to attract the other party outside the control range all at once. The other party will not be easily fooled. So Jia Yan used some tricks, that is, to have a real battle with two pieces of metal before. The time of this battle must be precise. After all, the other party is not a fool. After a long time, he will definitely notice something. That's right, Jia Yan regarded this thing as intelligent. He chased it several times and showed strong intelligence. Sometimes Jia Yan's fake moves were directly seen by the opponent, so Jia Yan judged that he had intelligence. So Jia Yan has been using his wisdom to entangle with the opponent, and the entanglement at this time really worked. Jia Yan paralyzed the opponent directly, and then attracted him to a place 1,500 meters away. After that, the speed suddenly increased, breaking through to an altitude of 2,000 meters. From 1,500 meters to 2,000 meters, the distance was only 500 meters. Both sides at full speed could break through in less than 1 second. To this height? As a result, the other party was unprepared and naturally fell for the trick, chasing him to a distance of 2,000 meters. Sure enough, his control is limited by distance. Jia Yan's compound eyes were shining at this time. He turned around and rushed towards the two pieces of metal material that had lost power. His final goal tonight is now. The thing below seemed to realize that it had been fooled, and an angry emotion was transmitted up. At this time, the voice that Jia Yan had experienced once appeared again. Yin 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 yin. A series of screams appeared directly in Jia Yan's head. The huge force seemed to pierce his head directly, and the pain caused by the scream made Jia Yan feel unable to move in an instant. However, having already had a related experience, he suddenly discovered something was wrong. Sure enough, your sound attack also has a distance limit. The attack power I feel here is simply not on the same level as the power I felt last time. Jia Yan was very careful in tonight's battle. He tried not to get close to the research institute within 100 meters, because the last time, he got close to within 100 meters before being attacked by a sound attack and almost lost his senses. Now at 2,000 meters, although the opponent's sound attack also stunned him, it was still far from the same result as last time. Jia Yan's compound eyes are even brighter. His body was still chasing downwards very quickly. Aiming at a metal object, his body rushed hard again. The speed increases again and again. The altitude is also dropping extremely fast. just when it's about to approach the height where that thing can completely control metallic matter again. At this moment, Jia Yan only felt something caught in his front feet. At this moment, he felt that the thing he was grabbing was so powerful that it was trying to break free from his control. Whistle, roar, roar. Jia Yan and Ben didn't have time to look at anything, so they just spread their wings and flapped them crazily. Under the violent vibration of the thing in his forefoot, his body flew higher into the air. When he felt that his altitude reached about 2,000 meters, the thing caught in his forefoot finally stopped twisting strangely, and his heart suddenly moved. When I looked down, what was the metal substance in the forefoot? Haha, thank you so much. That's it for today, I'll come back tomorrow. Jia Yanfu's eyes sparkled, and he burst out laughing in his heart as he looked down. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 220. Another metal object was in the air not far from Jia Yan, which was almost 2,000 meters away. It hovered at that place and did not dare to move forward. He is afraid. Jia Yan felt even more happy. His body turned around, and with the faint roar of the voice, he left the sky above the research institute. My purpose tonight is very simple, that is to test the attack distance of this creature or thing, and to see if it is intelligent. Now it seems that both of his attacks have distance limits. Metal, although matter can break through 3 times the speed of sound, the distance that thing can control them is only about 2,000 meters. As for the sound attack that almost fainted me last time, it can only be fatal to me within 100 meters. Threaten. Jia Yan looked at the scenery behind him. He seemed a little less afraid of this institute that exuded a huge threat and had a little more smile. He was cheering for himself. If he had chosen to give up when he felt that the thing in this place was really not something he could deal with before, he wouldn't have the sense of pleasure he has now. A feeling of revenge, which made him very happy. But this is not enough. Jia Yan has a cruel feeling in his heart. He came to this research institute just for the next opportunity to mutate. Now that he sees this weird thing here, does it mean that there is indeed a possibility of him getting a chance here? What's more, even if there is nothing else. Jia Yan looked at his front feet that were trembling slightly, trying to escape from the metal material in his grasp, and suddenly he smiled a little more. Even if there is nothing else, if there is this metallic substance that he desires so much, then it is necessary for this research institute to take a risk and explore it. What Jia Yan didn't know was that when his figure left the research institute, something in the research institute roared angrily. However, after the roar sounded for a while, it suddenly fell silent. As for those humans, the big mosquitoes had already attacked this place. When the weapons of those armies were ineffective against him. It is already completely organized and this place has been opened. Therefore, the roar of this thing was not heard by anyone, and it must not surprise anyone in the research institute. This thing actually exists in the research institute where they have been working for a long time. Jia Yan still returned to his temporary home in Qinghai Lake. There are a lot of things in this bush. He placed the newly obtained metal substance on the ground, deliberately farther away from the one he obtained before. I'm afraid that some chemical reaction will occur if both of them are allowed to escape together. Then he will be depressed for a long time. Fortunately, neither of the 2 pieces of metal moved at all after being placed on the ground. They all seemed dead. Jia Yan remembered that the piece he got first had moved, so he couldn't be careless at this time. Fortunately, this newly obtained piece of metal material. It seems that some kind of power has been consumed, and there is no sign of movement at all. Next. It depends on tomorrow. Jia Yan crawled down. Although tonight's battle did not consume much of his energy, the damage from the previous time was still not completely healed. Now that he had reluctantly confronted that creature again, his body must have become a little tired again. So I lay down and rested. Time passed quickly and a new day arrived. Over at the Research Institute, it seems that because of the big Mosquito Jia Yan's departure, some more humans appeared near the Research Institute. What I have to say is that it seems that after judging the pros and cons of starting a war with the giant mosquito monster, the top brass of the Huaxia kingdom finally decided to give up on this research. After a while, they felt that if the giant mosquito monster caused damage in this place, it should not be the kind of huge damage. After all, it is just a monster without much intelligence. At most, it will stay in this place for a while and then leave. Today's human beings still don't have much understanding of giant mosquito monsters and so-called metal monsters. They all stubbornly believe that these monsters are life forms with little intelligence. Each of these lives relies on the combat power of their own bodies to survive. Being able to fight humans, if they just use their brains, humans can throw these monsters away for more than 10 blocks. But they were absolutely wrong. Jia Yan didn't know what was going on with the metal monster. He himself was a real giant mosquito with human intelligence level. If you underestimate his wisdom too much, you will definitely suffer a big loss. The battle between humans and metal monsters is still going on today. The area occupied by metal monsters is even wider. On the ordinary human side, finally, after the high-level officials, there is a sense of tension. Finally, Japan was the first country to be unable to sit still. The damage they suffered was no longer able to allow its citizens to live well in their own country with peace of mind. So after they asked the so-called ally, the Star-Spangled Banner, at the request of the Japanese ally, finally launched another medium-yield nuclear bomb at the Japanese country after World War II. Nuclear bombs were used by humans for the first time against metal monsters. Countless media outlets around the world are reporting on this matter. Most of them are looking forward to the effect of this nuclear bomb attack. While some media are looking forward to it, they are also making fun of Japan. As a country that has withstood nuclear weapons attacks, in the Third World War against metal monsters, it was actually another one. The first one to withstand a nuclear bomb attack. And they still begged the country that had bombed them with nuclear weapons to use nuclear weapons to bomb their own land for the second time. He is simply a clown-like character. And under the spotlight, a Stars and Stripes aircraft carrier that had already arrived near the waters of Japan launched a medium-sized nuclear bomb with a yield of 50,000 tons, towards the land that had withstood nuclear bomb attacks. At this time, in the Japanese country, half of the entire Tokyo area had fallen into the hands of metal monsters. They bombed high-rise buildings to collapse, but used those building materials to build huge buildings that were not inferior to human skyscrapers. If Jia Yan sees it, he will definitely find that these buildings are almost exactly the same as those he saw in the city near his hometown. However, there are more buildings in Japan, and they are even larger in scale. The strange thing is that when human satellite radar reaches the sky above these places, it directly loses the image below. Some experts say that this is a kind of electromagnetic interference carried by the metal monster itself. They have also found these substances in the remains of the metal monster. As for why the interference range is so huge, almost covering the entire city, experts' explanation is that the number of these metal monsters gathered is too large, and the larger the number, the wider the scope of interference. Things are normal, you don't need to worry too much. The expert's explanation was like a stream of cool spring water, washing away everyone's worries. And actually, the places that cannot be photographed by satellites are directly those weird skyscraper-like buildings. Some of the buildings have extremely exaggerated and huge cannon muzzles. The largest ones are almost 50 or 60 meters long, with the muzzles raised high. And when the Stars and Stripes aircraft carrier launched a nuclear bomb attack on the distant coastline, located in a huge building in Tokyo Circle, a slender gun barrel seems to have detected something. Then, it turned extremely quickly. Boo! This gun barrel suddenly made a huge bombardment. A red light that was far bigger and brighter than the red light emitted by the metal monster cut through the sky. This red light pierced the sky, and its speed was many times the speed of sound. Boom 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 boom. A huge red light shot in a certain direction. The huge cannon barrel that fired the red light continued to turn around as if nothing had happened after it finished firing the red light. It seems like I have done an insignificant thing. But its red light is a red light that changes the entire human world's understanding of metal monsters. Reborn as an interstellar giant mosquito. Author, Bulletin U. Chapter 221. In the human world, countless TV stations are broadcasting live images of nuclear bombs attacking metal monsters. Humanity is in great need of a victory as a weapon to boost morale, and this nuclear bomb attack is the first step to this morale. If the effect is good, then a global nuclear war is foreseeable. Of course, even if mankind wins, the price paid will be huge. The huge impact on the entire environment, and the inertial force of the use of nuclear weapons will definitely allow many countries and even some terrorist organizations to obtain certain nuclear weapons that have become widespread. But as long as they can be with the threat of metal monsters removed, the human world has finally taken the risk. Even though there are so many disadvantages, when it's time to use it, use it. The morale that a nuclear bomb can bring is undoubtedly huge. But what people never expected was that in the Tokyo Circle City in the Japanese country, a ray of red light shot out and caught everyone's attention, crushing the dreams of countless people. While the TV screen was broadcasting the trajectory of the nuclear bomb that was about to hit the land of Japan, TV hosts from various countries were also constantly unlocking various data about this medium-yield nuclear bomb. The red light, like the beautiful fireworks passing through the layers of fog, suddenly arrived. But what he brought was not a beautiful scenery, but a desperate kind of destruction. Nuclear warheads are extremely fast, and their launch speed can reach several times the speed of sound. But this speed is simply not enough in front of this red light. That red light came quickly at an unknown speed. It's so fast that humans can only see the shadow of a red man approaching. Just like that, the nuclear warhead collided directly. Boom. A sudden bright white light, in this sky, seems to be the one that cuts through the universe, in order to bring everyone's hope. Completely shattering light from heaven. Accurately fired on the nuclear warhead in flight. A huge explosion sounded. This voice is extremely loud, but even louder is the voice of countless people who wish for destruction. Along with the sound, a loud light lit up in the live broadcast footage. At this time, the nuclear bombs had not yet flown out of the aircraft carrier's visual range. The high-definition camera that has been tracking the nuclear bomb above transmits this picture directly through countless screens, passed on to thousands of households. Boom boom boom. A sudden bright white light lit up in mid-air, and the brightness exceeded the brightness of the sun in an instant. People couldn't help but close their eyes tightly. But that huge explosion was still transmitted to all families through the TV screen. And that's it. The red light in the explosion had completely detonated the nuclear warhead. A brighter light rises from the sky. A mushroom cloud that seemed to pierce the sky. It was rising in the sky, and this mushroom cloud was directly a huge and violent shock wave. It immediately affected the distant aircraft carrier. The entire aircraft carrier shook, and along with it, the camera lens also shook. But no one paid attention to that little detail. People looked at the nuclear bomb detonated by a huge red light in the sky speechlessly for a long time, with only one thought in their minds. That's it, things are really big. That red light was obviously the work of the metal monster. Although they could not emit such a huge red light, this red light was very similar to their attack method. As long as you have seen people with that kind of red light, you will never forget their appearance. And on this earth, besides metal monsters, what else can produce such red light? Not even humans can do it. However, this red light has actually reached such a powerful level that it is nothing compared to the red light released by those metal monsters alone. Human beings have actually been explaining the existence of metal monsters, and they have given countless answers. Some of them say that metal monsters were created by some evil scientific organization in humans. Some say that the metal monsters are left over from an ancient civilization. Others say that this metal monster was sent by God to solve the cosmic virus of mankind. However, after everyone saw the true fighting power of the metal monster, they were actually a little relieved, because what they saw was an existence that, although they could not completely deal with it, at least it was not something that humans could not resist at once. Everyone has actually thought about it to some extent, that is, if metal monsters have other weapons and powers that far exceed those on Earth, what will happen to the Earth's world? Is it total destruction? Or are you waiting to become a slave? But the metal monster's performance has always been tepid. Although it suppressed the human army until it could not breathe, it was not completely suppressed in terms of strength. Some people have even calculated that if their numbers are as high as they are now, then due to energy problems, they will be completely destroyed when they defeat 50 million human armies. This calculation method has been very popular since it was proposed on the internet. The person who proposed this formula even appeared on TV and became famous because of it. But this is just an imagination of human beings. If the metal monsters are just going in the direction of human imagination, then why do they come out of the underground where they are? In fact, they may not have even used their full strength even to their current position. These high-rise buildings with great offensive power are proof. If this red light attacks the cities of Earthlings, what kind of damage will it cause? Have no idea. And how many metal monsters have been built of these huge barrels? I don't know this either. How much red light can a gun barrel continuously emit? I don't know this either. In fact, after fighting for so many days, the people on Earth thought they understood this metal monster opponent, and even gave them a scientific name for the Earth people's way. However, they didn't understand the real metal monster at all. Therefore, today's nuclear bomb attack was originally intended to give humans more determination to deal with metal monsters, but unexpectedly it backfired. At this time, not only the high-ranking officials of the Earth were dumbfounded, but also the ordinary people they wanted to give confidence to. Everyone was stunned. These people also have a cold feeling. That is, can these metal monsters really be defeated by humans? The idea of sending your children to join the army must not be allowed. So at this time, the support for various countries was suddenly reduced to the lowest level. At this moment, the stock price also plummeted. At this time, all human beings are in a state of panic. It was just a red light, but it plunged the entire human world into panic. No. Not just panic, but despair. If anyone sees the huge building that is the culprit, it will look like it has not done anything at all. It is just standing proudly in the cold wind at high altitude. The giant cannon that brings despair to mankind, seems to always have that indifferent look. The uproar in the human world on Earth did not affect Jiayan in Qinghai Lake in China. Big Mosquito no longer cares about those things. He is near this research institute because he wants to decipher the secrets of that research institute. In the bushes not far from the research institute, Jiayan looked at the research institute in the distance with a pair of compound eyes. Today is a light rainy day, and there is no sunshine above the head. It seems that this weather is also foreshadowing something in the Japanese country that will make the entire human race extremely noisy. However, for Jiayan now, this matter is not his first something to be concerned about. He is now focused on continuing to improve his strength. Maybe he also had a sense of urgency. He had to become stronger to deal with the metal monster and this crisis. Of course, he still didn't think that much now. He didn't even know that the Japanese country was launching a nuclear warhead.